Sorry, America, but the world is quietly rolling its suitcases somewhere else. Once the brightest star on the global travel map, the United States is now witnessing something few could have predicted. The whole world, including Americans themselves, is silently choosing Canada, Mexico, Portugal, and even Vietnam instead of New York, Las Vegas, or Los Angeles. Not because America has lost its charm, but because other places are simply easier to live in, more affordable, and more welcoming. You think the world is just a little bored with America? Not really. They've already booked one-way tickets, brought their luggage, their friends, and one big question: has America stopped being a place to truly relax? When the world changes course, America needs to rethink its map. There's something strange happening in the global tourism industry. And no, this time it's not because of a storm, a pandemic, or a surprise discount campaign from Disneyland. It's a kind of voting with suitcases, quiet but unmistakable, from millions of international travelers. They're no longer flocking to New York out of habit, no longer squeezing under the lights of Las Vegas, and not even tempted by discount coupons in Orlando. They're turning left, turning toward Canada. No giant flags, no fireworks, no live-streamed promotions. Canada simply smiles and opens its doors. And people come, from Europe, from Asia, and even from America itself. The latest data from the World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, shows, for the first time in over half a century, the number of international visitors to Canada has surpassed those to the U.S. Something that seems illogical but is completely reasonable. If we take a closer look at the world map, and more importantly, the map of trust. In Toronto, you don't have to glance over your shoulder to see if someone's watching you. In Vancouver, you don't need to install 5 different apps just to check room prices. Everything feels lighter, cheaper, and the people more genuine. Not the casual, have a nice day, kind, but a friendliness rooted in a culture of kindness. Something many feel is growing distant in the rhythm of modern American life. This isn't a small slip in America's tourism industry. This is an alarm bell from a much deeper societal shift. It raises a question that's not easy to hear, but one that needs to be asked. Is the world losing faith in the United States? Or are Americans themselves losing faith in their own dream? The truth is, more and more Americans are looking for a way out, not to run away, but just to breathe. Posts on Reddit, Facebook, and YouTube are now full of stories from Americans living in Quebec, settling in Nova Scotia, or retiring in Ontario. People who once were teachers, nurses, engineers, now live in lakeside homes in Canada at 1/3 the cost of Florida, and more importantly, with a sense of safety, kindness, and peace they never thought they'd feel again. And that is the crux of it: safety and kindness. America has long been the symbol of strength, of opportunity, of just do it. But in an age where rent in San Francisco equals 6 months of a retired teacher's pension, and walking at 11 p.m. in Chicago feels like a gamble, strength alone isn't enough. People don't need to admire. They need to feel welcome. Canada doesn't lecture anyone. They don't make viral videos saying we're better. They just quietly keep doing the right thing. Healthcare that's accessible, immigration laws that don't humiliate, and police officers who ask, "Is everything okay?" before, "Where are you from?" Meanwhile, U.S. tourism is increasingly defined by airport barricades, excessive baggage checks, and a constant sense of unease, often coming not from foreigners, but from how society treats its own. And this isn't just a tourism problem. It's a trust issue, a soft asset, but a vital one. A nation doesn't lose its standing just because hotel revenues dip, but when the world begins choosing somewhere else to seek kindness, safety, and a welcoming atmosphere. That standing erodes from the root. So, what can America do? Add another slogan? Launch another mega marketing campaign? Maybe not. Maybe what America needs to do is listen. Look north, not out of envy toward Canada, but to learn from how a smaller, quieter country manages to hold on to the world's heart with quiet resilience and unpretentious hospitality. Because if visitors come to the U.S. and have to ask, "Am I safe here? Will I be judged? Will my passport or skin color be a problem?" Then the issue isn't branding. The issue lies at the heart of the travel experience. And no amusement park in the world can cover up that feeling. And if someone asks, "So what's more fun in Canada than in the U.S.?" just smile like a true North American and say, "No McDonald's on every corner maybe, but you just might find yourself in a place where you don't have to prove anything to be welcomed." When Americans are also leaving the American dream. If the fact that the world is choosing Canada over the U.S. has made the Stars and Stripes tourism industry flinch, then perhaps the more thought-provoking reality is this: Americans themselves are doing the same thing. Not through protests, not through tearful speeches, but by quietly selling their homes, withdrawing retirement funds, booking one-way tickets, and disappearing from the system. Where to? Across the border, down south, or over the ocean, as long as they're not staying. There's no need for a global economic crisis. Just a $200 increase in the electricity bill or a medical charge after a minor fall is enough for a retiree in Florida to make a U-turn toward Nova Scotia. Not because they hate America, but because they simply can't keep living with inhumane numbers on their monthly expense sheet. A 72-year-old woman who once lived in Ohio shared, "I never thought I'd leave the U.S., but when my insurance premium started rising faster than my blood pressure, I began to wonder, has this country become home only to the young and super rich?" And when you Google the phrase "best places to retire outside the U.S., the list doesn't show Dubai, Switzerland, or Singapore, but rather Portugal, Mexico, Vietnam, names that once only appeared in history books or all-inclusive tours. Now, they're places to go to survive, not to take selfies. Mexico, a country often associated with warnings about violence and cartels in American news, has now become the #1 vacation choice for Americans. Not because they're ignoring risks, but because they actually feel less at risk over there. In Tijuana, Cancun, or Playa del Carmen, people pay $1,200 for a week-long getaway that includes a 4-star hotel, buffet meals, massages, turquoise beaches, and even smiles from the reception staff. In Orlando, that amount might only get you out of the airport. It's ironic, really, that America, a country that once built its image as the land of freedom and prosperity, has now become a place where its own people can't even rest. Travel is no longer a reward, but a lifeline, a way to escape paychecks, medical bills, and the anxiety creeping into every corner of American life. What drives people away from the U.S. isn't the lack of fast food, but the lack of a lighthearted way of living. In America, everything is measured by speed, delivery speed, growth rate, mental breakdown rate. Meanwhile, in the countries Americans are now heading toward, everything is measured by eye contact, shared meals, time spent together, and laughs that don't cost a thing. In Chapala, a peaceful lakeside town in central Mexico, there's an entire community of American retirees. They live in cozy homes, have housekeepers, eat well, and have doctors who make house calls. And most importantly, no one asks them, "What do you do for a living?" or "How much is in your bank account?" They simply ask, "It's a beautiful sunny day. Shall we go for a walk?" This choice may seem at first glance like a step backward, but for many Americans, it's a way to rediscover themselves. When you've spent your whole life running, from school to work, from gas station to emergency room, stopping by a quiet lake isn't a luxury anymore. It's salvation. And that's what America should think about. If even Americans themselves can no longer live within their own dream, how can anyone else be expected to believe in it? No one wants to give up their homeland, but everyone has the right to find a place where they can live as a human being, not just a tax ID, a medical file, or a location tracked by an app. The question is no longer why are they leaving, but why do they have to leave? And if there's no compassionate answer to that question, then the stream of people quietly rolling their suitcases across the border will only grow, not with noise, not with anger, but with the most precious thing they carry, the desire to live with dignity and peace. Cheap paradise, but it's kindness that makes Americans stay. When Americans began leaving their own country seeking easier places to live, something unexpected happened. Destinations once labeled as cheap, noisy, and unsafe became the most beloved paradises. Not because they suddenly got richer, but because they welcomed people with something America is gradually forgetting: kindness. Ask a family from Texas who once took out high-interest loans for a 4-day Disneyland trip how they felt when they discovered that in Cancun, Mexico, they could enjoy a 7-day all-inclusive package with a buffet, swimming pool, private beach, and massage for the same price as a 2-day park ticket in the U.S., and they exclaimed, "Why didn't we know this sooner?" Mexico, once portrayed by American media as dangerous, chaotic, and full of traps, has now become the #1 vacation choice for Americans. Not because they're being reckless, but because they're tired of spending money and worrying at the same time. In Tulum, you don't have to clutch your wallet when walking down the street. In Merida, you don't need extra health insurance just to eat a taco. In San Miguel de Allende, a colonial city with European architecture in Central America, people greet you with eye contact, not price tags. Here, kindness isn't luxury service. It's culture. It's the taxi driver asking, "Are you feeling okay today?" before asking, "Where to?" It's the hotel staff wrapping your takeaway pastries with care, with no tip expected. It's feeling like you're not a customer, but someone genuinely cared for. By contrast, in America, many people feel like they're going for a job interview on vacation. You must prove you can afford it, understand state laws, read the fine print on car rentals, and absolutely don't forget your e-ticket, because no exceptions. A couple from Arizona planned to retire in Florida until they took a short trip to Lake Chapala, Mexico. They said, "We only planned to stay 1 week, but after 2 days, we canceled our U.S. plans." Now they live in a house with a garden, hire a part-time helper, eat healthily, and most importantly, they no longer feel like a burden on society just because they're over 65. So what's truly attracting Americans to countries like Mexico, Portugal, or Thailand? Clearly, low cost isn't the only factor. Cheap might bring you once, but comfort is what makes you return, or decide to stay forever. A phrase trending on Google: affordable places with dignity. Places affordable yet that don't make you feel small for not spending a lot. That's a very human, fundamental need. And regrettably, many large U.S. cities have dropped the ball on it. Imagine, you can spend $4,000 on a resort vacation in Hawaii, where every service is priced separately. Or you can spend $1,500 in Da Nang, Vietnam, and get a peaceful vacation with real smiles, real waves, and kindness that's real. The world is changing, and Americans, famous for their adventurous spirit, are leading the way to rediscover what seems simple: the feeling of being human, not just a customer with a QR code. This isn't about America falling behind. It just shows that when you were once number one in the world, kindness is no longer optional. It's the standard. And if you lose that, you'll see other places, though not showy, without fancy restaurant chains, outshine you with their sincerity. So one day, if you spot elderly folks speaking English in Mexico, or see a family of Americans leisurely having breakfast on a beach in southern Thailand, don't assume they're just on vacation. They might have chosen to live a different life, where they don't have to fight to feel worthy of love, when happiness doesn't need advertising. Have you noticed? The world is slowing down, not because cars are driving slower, but because people are starting to choose destinations not for what there is to see, but for where they feel they can see themselves. The new kind of travel is no longer about checking in at the tallest building or watching fireworks from a cruise ship. It's about the feeling of enjoying breakfast without being rushed, drinking coffee without being told time's up, and being asked, "Are you okay?" instead of, "Do you have a reservation?" In the US, service is an industry. In many other countries, service is a human instinct. And it is precisely this difference that has sparked a new wave of travel choices, quiet but deeply meaningful, across the global tourism landscape. Try going to Spain on any summer afternoon. You'll see something no tour guide ever lists: elderly men and women dressed neatly, strolling the streets, not to shop, just to walk, to greet each other, smile, say hola to strangers, and sit for hours at a cafe just to watch the sky. No reason needed. Meanwhile, in New York, if you sit too long at a cafe without ordering something else, you'll get a reminder glance or a friendly bill. In Spain, you can sit for 3 hours, order one espresso, and maybe get a warm invitation to try some cake. Slow living here isn't a philosophy. It's just how life is. The strange thing is, so many Americans, used to packed schedules, alarm clocks, and Excel spreadsheets, are being drawn to that simplicity. Many of them once thought that retirement was the time to make the most of every moment. But when they arrive in Seville or Valencia, they realize you don't have to maximize anything. Just living enough is already more than enough. In the US, you can drive a Tesla, order food from 5 different apps, and get deliveries by drone, and still feel lonely. In a small Spanish village, you can walk to the market, talk to the vegetable seller, have dinner from 8 to 11 p.m., and not need to post anything online to know you're living in the right place, at the right rhythm. A retired professor from Boston once said, "I used to think slowness meant falling behind. But here, I see it as a sign of wisdom, when people know what's worth cherishing and what's okay to let go." And he's not the only one who thinks that way. In recent years, Spain has consistently ranked among the top countries chosen by Americans for travel, trial stays, or retirement. Not because of the weather, not entirely because it's affordable, but because people here value people more than speed. The interesting thing is, you won't see Spain running massive promotional campaigns like many other countries. They don't need to, because what they offer isn't something to sell, it's something to feel. And things that can be felt spread on their own. A phrase trending on international travel platforms: Spain isn't a destination, it's a reminder. A reminder that happiness doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be flashy, doesn't have to be ultra-convenient, just enough for people to feel enough. Why does this resonate so much with Americans? Perhaps because they're living in a culture that seems free, but is actually governed by schedules, productivity, and success metrics. In some major U.S. cities, you can be successful but have no friends, live in style, but no one would remember your name if you disappeared tomorrow. But in a small town in Toledo, The baker remembers what kind of pastry you like. The bartender sets your water down just the way you always drink it. And your neighbor, even if just met, will ask, "Do you need anything?" instead of pretending to be busy scrolling through their phone. And this isn't just happening in Spain, it's happening in other places too. Small corners of the world that know how to make you feel significant. Not because you're rich, famous, or powerful, but simply because you're present, and that alone is enough to be welcomed. So, if you've ever thought you had to spend thousands of dollars to be fully serviced, try sitting down at a small roadside cafe in Spain, order a coffee, and listen to a stranger tell you their life story. You might just realize what you truly need isn't a premium service package, but a place that sees you as a real person. When cleanliness, discipline, and politeness become the most attractive travel experiences. After falling in love with the slow pace of life in Spain, the heartfelt simplicity of Mexico, or the lakefront serenity of Canada, many American tourists continue to search for something that few places in the world can truly offer. Absolute respect for every individual, from eye contact, gestures, to every centimeter of public space. And they find it in a place that seems dry at first glance. Japan. You won't see Japan advertising itself as a paradise getaway. They don't have wide-open beaches blaring loud music, or all-you-can-drink tours like at Caribbean resorts. But you will see something rare. In Japan, everything is small, but everyone is dignified. From the moment you land at the airport, every journey in Japan feels as if it were designed for someone, with self-respect. No one rushes you. No one judges you. You don't have to shout to be served, nor pay extra to be respected. In Tokyo, you can leave your wallet on the table and return 10 minutes later. And not only find it there, but possibly with an apology note from the person who found it, saying they made you worry. Sounds strange? For Americans used to living in a society where everything needs a rule, and those rules are often gambled by spontaneous emotions, the precision, subtlety, and self-awareness of the Japanese is a gentle, yet addictive shock. An American family who once lived in Los Angeles said, "We thought we knew what civilization meant, but in Kyoto, seeing a homeless man bow and pick up a piece of trash someone else left behind, we realized, civilization isn't convenience. It's how people treat the space they live in, and each other." Japan is a place where tourists don't need to be welcomed with showiness, but are quietly brought into a rhythm of life that respects every individual. You're waiting for the train? Don't worry, it'll arrive on time. You ask for directions? People won't just point, they'll walk with you. You don't know how to use the subway? Someone might print a personal map for you so you won't get lost next time. And the most interesting part? No one does this to be praised. They do it because it's the right thing to do. That's why, when American tourists, coming from a culture where service sometimes means you can have anything as long as you pay, arrive in Japan, they're not just surprised. They relearn how to behave, how to walk slowly, how to bow, and how to say thank you without feeling awkward. On many American travel blogs, one phrase is trending: "I didn't feel like a tourist in Japan. I felt like a guest." That difference is so subtle it's hard to describe, but once you've experienced it, you'll never forget. Like remembering a meal that didn't need to be expensive, just needed the cook to put real care into slicing every piece of radish. The world is gradually growing tired of places that try too hard. Travelers no longer want to be forced to have fun. They need a place that makes them feel respected, not judged, not forced to smile just to receive decent service. And Japan is doing that, quietly, precisely, sustainably, just like the way they've run trains on time down to the second for decades. In America, humor is the national spirit. In Canada, Gentleness is a national treasure, but in Japan, discipline is a form of kindness. Not loud, not preachy, not advising others how to live right, just silently setting an example in every smallest action. And it is exactly that which has made more and more Americans choose Japan not only as a place to travel, but as a place to relearn how to live. With moderation, with attentiveness, and with kindness. That doesn't need to be shown off. If you're tired of insurance calls, tedious paperwork just to rent a car, or judgmental glances when you walk into a restaurant that doesn't match your vibe, then maybe Japan is the place for you to see. The world still has places where you are respected, for no reason at all. Where Americans rediscover themselves is not at home. After experiencing the precise kindness down to every millimeter in Japan, Americans continue their journey, no longer to see more of the world, but to find themselves again. And the next destination, perhaps one of the biggest surprises, Vietnam. It may sound ironic. A country once associated with war has now become a place where Westerners, especially middle-aged and older Americans, come to heal. But if you come to Hoi An early in the morning, step into an open meditation session in a temple, or simply sit on a sidewalk and eat a bowl of pho while the vendor asks, "Would you like vegetarian or meat today?" you'll understand why. Vietnam doesn't need to be cheap to be attractive, though it truly is affordable. But what keeps people there isn't the cost, it's the feeling of being welcomed, even if you have nothing in hand but a smile and a pair of sandals. Carla, a 64-year-old former nurse from Pennsylvania, recounted her first trip to Hue. "I didn't understand Vietnamese, but when strangers placed their hands on my shoulders after the meditation session, I suddenly burst into tears. No one asked me what I did for a living. They just asked, 'Are you okay?' And that was enough to make me want to stay." In America, everything has its protocol. Doctor appointments require booking, hotels require deposits, massages require prepayment and tipping afterward. In Vietnam, sometimes you're invited to a meal before anyone even asks where you're from. Americans, who have lived in a society where everything is packaged, priced, and wrapped in policy, now find themselves moved by being offered tea, for no reason at all. Vietnamese people don't do tourism. They live alongside tourists. And in that coexistence, there's something that makes those from maximum efficiency civilizations feel at ease, as if, for the first time in years, they don't have to perform. Vietnam is also emerging as a hub for healing tourism, not because of its abundance of luxury spas, but because of its quiet hills, cafes with views of rice fields, and neighbors willing to give directions, cook a meal, and sit and listen to your story. It's no coincidence that phrases like "retreat for Americans in Vietnam," "spiritual healing Southeast Asia," or "Vietnam for emotional recovery" are becoming popular search trends on platforms like Google, YouTube, and Reddit. A 70-year-old man from California, after a divorce and withdrawing his entire retirement fund, chose to live in Dalat. "I used to think I'd die in sadness in a small apartment in Los Angeles," he said. "But here, I have a little garden, a landlady who makes me chicken porridge when I catch a cold, and every morning someone asks me, 'Did you sleep well?' A simple question that made me want to keep living." The simplicity in Vietnam is not lack of modernity. It's a deliberate choice. People still use smartphones, still have Grab delivering food, still enjoy artisan coffee and shopping malls. But beneath all that movement is a slower heartbeat, where people aren't rushing to decide who you are just based on your clothes, wallet, or language. For Americans, those used to a system that rates everything, being seen as a normal person, without a profile, without feedback, without needing to be ID verified, is a strange yet liberating experience. Canada is gentle like a hug, Japan is tidy like an apology, while Vietnam is warm like a morning bowl of pho, simple, fragrant with herbs, and enough to make someone forget they were ever so tired. So don't be surprised if you see white-haired, fair-skinned folks speaking broken English by the banks of the Perfume River, sharing sweet soup with students, or washing dishes with a homestay owner. They're not just traveling, they are coming back to life, in every sense of the word. When small countries are doing what superpowers forgot. As Americans continue their journey in search of an easier place to live, going beyond familiar destinations like Canada, Japan, or Vietnam, a name that once seemed overlooked is quietly appearing on the map of choices. Croatia. No noise, no million-dollar promotional campaigns, no Disneyland or globally famous restaurant chains. Yet every beach, every ancient stone village, every slow smile of the Croatian people is doing what many other places no longer do, giving travelers the feeling that they're no longer visitors, but someone returning home. A couple from Nevada had once planned to retire in Naples, Florida, but after a few sleepless nights calculating insurance costs, property taxes, and all the unnamed fees, they stumbled upon a blog written by an American living in Split. 2 round-trip tickets, a bit of doubt, and a lot of curiosity. Then they arrived in Croatia, and never went back. No one here asks me what I do for a living. They just ask if I'd like more wine, the husband shared with a laugh. It's not that he hated America, it's just that in Croatia, he felt like he could live as a normal person. Something that, back home, with all the procedures, expectations, and non-stop life updates, seemed increasingly difficult. Croatia doesn't try to keep up with the world. It follows its own rhythm, a pace that Americans, long weary of speed, convenience, and modernity, are now seeking. You can rent a seaside home in Dubrovnik for the price of a week's parking in Manhattan. But more importantly, your neighbor might knock on your door to invite you for dinner, not because you're famous, not because you're influential, but simply because you're nearby. This simplicity is not underdevelopment. It's selective development, preserving values that bring people closer, not lost in a sea of promotions, technology, and exaggeration. You can spend an entire afternoon at a cafe in Zadar, watching the sunset over the Adriatic Sea, listening to music from wind tubes beneath the sidewalk. And no one rushes you to pay. No one's in a hurry, and no one is trying to sell you an experience. You are free to enjoy, not just consume. For Americans, raised on the checklist model of travel, you must go, must see, must post, must review. The experience in Croatia is an unexpected silence. Nothing needs to be rushed. No one forces you to make it count. Just sit down, breathe, and let everything drift gently, like the waves below the ancient stone steps. In fact, more and more young Americans, especially remote workers and digital nomads, are choosing Croatia as their new base. Not because it's hot, but because it's far enough to feel peaceful, close enough to stay connected, and real enough to feel human, not just a service package tagged with an RFID chip. Reddit forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube channels about living in Croatia as an American are growing rapidly. And what's the common thread in these stories? Not the scenery, but the feeling of being yourself. A 58-year-old former accountant from Dallas shared that in the U.S., she felt invisible after retiring. No one asked for advice, no one invited her out, no one even noticed she was still healthy and around. But in Croatia, after just 1 week, she had coffee friends, someone to go to the market with, and even a bakery that remembered her name after only her second visit. Presence. Maybe that's what Americans are really looking for. Not just a place to exist, but a place that makes them feel, I'm truly here, without needing to prove anything. And Croatia is doing that. Not through gimmicks, not through low costs, but through simple values that modern America seems to have left behind in its rush forward. So if someone asks, what's changing in global tourism? Perhaps the answer isn't far away. It's in the friendly gaze of an old fruit vendor at the split market, in the soft piano music drifting from a small cafe by the sea in Var, and in the way people say, welcome back, even if you've only just arrived 3 days ago.